afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for taking the time to join us for the smartQED podcast. Today, it is our honor and pleasure to have with us David, who is a certified ITIL Master, and he has graciously agreed to spend some time with us talking about his experiences. Welcome, David. Great to have you here. And at the outset, it would be great if you can introduce yourself for our audience, maybe talk about your current day job, your role, a little bit about your background, and even if you want to talk about your career journey, that would be great. Over to you, David.
Okay. First of all, thanks for inviting me today. That's really my pleasure also to be there with you. And as you can hear, I am French. I live in the middle of Europe, and my career started a long time ago. I'm not like Yoda, but I started, let's say, IT service management 20 years ago. And in fact, I did a lot of different things. For instance, I set up my organization, was a registered certification body for ISO 20000. So that means I was the main auditor, and I certified organization on this ISO standard on service management. After a while, I sold my company. I created another one, and this new company was much more focused on consultancy. On IT service management, where I helped organization to get prepared for the ISO 20000 certification, but also to implement processes. I also managed from scratch a global service desk for more than 5,000 users. And since 2011, I am delivering different training courses on ITIL and on other reference model or frameworks in IT service management. That's roughly what I'm doing. I still work on the training area and try to do my best to do some consulting job on a daily basis.
That's quite a lot of things you have already done and continue to do. I mean, you have a consulting practice, you run training classes, and of course you have your regular, quality assurance work regarding ISO certification. You have a lot of balls that you're juggling in the air. Commendable. All right. So, I mean, I would really like to ask you about the kind of challenges that you have encountered in your work and how you address them. And when I say have encountered, that's just a way of speaking. I'm sure there are many that you still do. More importantly, if you could share about how those challenges, in your view, have evolved, during the course of the last 2 decades that span your career.
Thank you for the question. So if I try to pick up some examples, for instance, from the incident management process, I told you I managed a service desk, and in that service desk, we had a Swiss customer. In Switzerland, they speak, there are 4 official languages, but in fact, we had to do the support in 3 languages, in Italian, in French, and in English. And just imagine that you want to implement problem management. Okay, so that means you want to analyze some incidents and to want to correlate, to find the root cause of these incidents. And imagine when you have some incidents described in French, others in English, other in Italian. Okay, so this is a challenge. It seems to be a kind of, but this is, for instance, one thing that I think can be an example of a challenge that still needs to be addressed in many cases. Okay. Another one I would say is what we call the weak signals. I work for different customers, and the problem was, when you have a user calling them, for instance, saying that they can't access an application, the typical incident. In fact, it's very hard for the service desk agent, even if it takes control or remote control to the machine, to reproduce this incident. So you have this kind of cases where the incidents are not easy to be reproduced. That's what we call, you know, some weak signals. So it means you never know when it happens. You cannot really go through a full diagnosis of that. And that's also another challenge where maybe some tools can be useful. But what I want to say is that even if we talk about automation and so on, there are a lot of areas in incident management, in fact, where let's say, artificial intelligence can show its added value, but also see its limits.
Completely agree with you on that. I come from a different part of the world, job description wise, but I could immediately relate to that weak signals that you said. In fact, we have different ways of calling it. You know, my favorite is the signal to noise ratio. It's going to be difficult to get the real signal out there from the whole host of information that, you know, lands at you from, you know, whether it could be a log or it could be what the you know, user who's facing the difficulty is telling the service agent. So completely, you know, agree with what you said. Now, David, we know that you are a certified ITIL master. We're not going to let you go without asking you to, you know, share your insights into how, in your view, the ITIL landscape is evolving. We know that there's ITIL 3 and then ITIL 4, etc. So if you could just share your insights and your views around how that space is evolving and where do you think it would go from here?
Yes, thank you for that once again. So regarding, you know, how ITIL evolving over time, in fact, we really show that the trend is that we started, you know, with an inventory of processes, that what they call the best practices, and it was a success of ITIL because people wanted, didn't bother, you know, to develop new things. They wanted to know what's the best of breed, you know, what they can do the best, or how the competitor can, for instance, manage a service desk, how we can agree the level of quality with our customers and so on. So in ITIL, the history of ITIL is in fact linked to provisioning of some, let's say, reference processes, of some, you know, best practice that you can judge as usable for you, and you can adopt and adapt. It's still the case in ITIL 4, but now the main difference with ITIL 4 is that they don't just, you know, explain some processes, but they explain, you know, a full operating model. That's what they call the service value system. And in this service value system, the processes, which are now called practices, are just part of it. It's just to ensure that you have a compatibility between ITIL version 3 and ITIL 4. But the real thing is ITIL 4 needs to be understood like a model, a real conceptual model that can give you answers to any questions or any request you have about the services you provide, or you maybe want to provide in the future, or you provided in the past. That's the idea of ITIL 4. So from an enumeration model, we are now in a conceptual model, which makes this more difficult for many people. Because if you have a conceptual model, you need to think how to use this model. If you have an enumeration model, you just need to select what is important for you. So the thinking effort now in ITIL 4 is much more higher than in ITIL version 3. That's the first thing. The second thing, ITIL 4 needs to be a kind of let's say, reference also that takes part from other frameworks, okay? They get inspired from service integration, for instance, for supplier management. They converge with what COBIT also offers to be sure that they can cover the strategic part of it, you know, which was nearly seen as a very weak part of ITIL. ITIL was considering as very good for operations, but not for the strategic management of services, okay? So what I want to, and also, of course, they made ITIL 4 much more compatible with some new movements like DevOps and with an agile approach, which was also something that was not the case in ITIL version 3, when in ITIL version 3, we were really thinking about the V cycle of services. So roughly, we are now in a conceptual model that can be adapted in a context of waterfall or in an agile context, and where you can pick up practices in order to create the best standardized answer to any kind of questions you have. And these best standardized answers, that's what we call a value stream.
Thank you so much, David. That was extremely enlightening, for someone who's relatively new to this field. Just a follow-up question on this. Would you say that with the inception and progress, or rather evolution of ITIL 4, would you believe that organizations now have an imperative to become more self-aware of their business processes? Because it's no longer the case that there's a menu that they can just pick and choose from. You really have to think about what should be the way to go rather than taking items from a checklist. So and in that sense, do you think organizations are ready or comfortable making this leap from 3 to 4?
I think that this ITIL version 4, ITIL 4, is really, you use the word lightning. So it's lightning organization, or it makes them more aware of the relationship between the business processes and the IT processes. Why? Because in fact, we don't talk about processes in isolation. We talk about processes that are part of a value stream. If I give you a very simple example, we talk about the value stream when we talk about, for instance, the procedure to onboard new employees. And when you have this procedure, then you mix some HR processes with IT processes, of course. And you create, the most suitable value stream to be sure of one thing. I am a newcomer in your organization. The only thing that makes me wait for my starting my job is to take my picture at the reception in order to get my badge. But all the other things, my access to the systems, all the things I need to work for my work, are ready to go. Everything is prepared. That's the value from this value stream. And that's what I say is that, in fact, in ITIL 4, they try to explain you that this notion of value stream, which is, cross the organization, it's not about IT business. It's about IT and business processes, and not alone to fulfill some value stream. So what is the challenge of that? The challenge in organization is to be sure that they can, wisely choose their strategic focus area, because their strategic focus area define the key questions. If you have the key questions, you know what are the main value streams you need to implement, because implementing a value stream, it's a matter of months. It costs a lot of time and resources, okay? So I think this is why ITIL 4 can be, useful for organization.
Great. One last question for the time being to you, David, is like I meet up people who are new to the ITSM space, fairly green, and they're all kind of inclined to or are actively pursuing certifications, which could be ITIL certifications or even other certifications. So what advice would you like to give somebody like that, somebody new in the ITSM field, and any specific certifications related advice that you would like to give them?
My advice, and it will not surprise you, is to go for the ITIL 4 Foundation certification. Depending on if you do it online as a e-learning, or if you do it in a classroom, it can last 2 or 3 days, and it's not a big investment in time to get a good structured overview of what ITIL 4 offers. And then, of course, in ITIL you have different you have a certification scheme. So from foundation you can go to 2 different paths to become more like what we call a managing professional. So that means to be an expert in implementing ITIL, or to be a strategic leader. So that means to know how you can align the strategy of the business with the strategy of the IT services. but it's up to you. I would say if you have to start with a certification, start with ITIL 4 Foundation. You get the certification, you have a certification which has a lot of a very good reputation on a global scale, and the validity is a lifetime for this certification. So it's a good start.
Thank you so much, David. At this point in time, maybe I would probably like to invite Terry into the discussion as well. Terry, you're the co-founder of smartQED, and you've been using ITIL effectively for a good many years. Would really like our audience to hear from you why, or rather, what was your motivation into building smartQED and how it fits into the ITIL scheme of things. But before you go ahead and answer that question, please do introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. I'm Terry Gallagher. I'm the head of customer solutions here at smartQED. Basically serve as the voice of the customer. I work closely with the product team to help design and test our product. I've got experience in large enterprises. Started out in the development arena, moved into operations, program management, did a lot of crisis management, disaster recovery type of stuff. And as a crisis manager, facilitating critical outages and P1 outages, I was single point of contact, or as they lovingly referred to it back then, as the one throat to choke. And I've got a lot of experience working into these pressure cookers and war rooms and so forth, those situations, trying to ultimately resolve these problems as quickly as possible, i.e. reduce MTTR, and working with engineers and management, business management, et cetera, trying to keep everybody cool and calm while we get to the root cause and ultimately restore service. So that, that's my background. So coming from that perspective, I got together with Julie several years back, and we started talking about basically the lack of good tool sets in this space to help identify quickly and communicate efficiently with all of the stakeholders and experts, SMEs and engineers to resolve and investigate these problems efficiently. And that's when we started talking about how can we use a different approach here, something that's more visual and less text oriented. How can we leverage technology, AI, ML, et cetera, to help identify problems more quickly and suggest solutions, et cetera. And that's ultimately how we ended up on our journey here with smartQED. And I think we've developed a pretty nice tool here that can be used in conjunction with ITIL processes or not.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry. So with that, I'm pretty much towards the end of the Q&A format. Terry, is there something that you would like to ask David? Anything that comes to mind, maybe with regards to where he sees the school? I don't know if David has or we have had a chance to show David the product, but assuming we do, maybe we can check with him what he thinks about it and if he feels value into the ITIL space. It's up to the two of you, Terry, how you want to.
Sure. I mean, my experiences are similar in terms of how I got started. This was probably 15 years ago, of establishing support organizations from the ground up, implementing tools like Jira and ServiceNow, and trying to get COBIT, ITIL alignment in these processes. Initially, I was focused more on like event management, incident management, problem management, change management, those types of things. And again, like I said, the tool sets there were very text oriented, difficult to kind of dig out information quickly. And I don't know, from David's perspective, it sounds like you obviously have a more depth of experience in terms of ITIL in its entirety. So do you have a sense of how different types of tools integrate into, in particular, incident management?
So thanks for the question. Yes. Before I start with the answer, I wanted to say just something, to what has been said about if I know or not the tool. Julie already showed me the tool at different times, and it made me think about the potential of the tool. So back to your question, as I know a little bit ITIL and different processes, it's true that in fact the idea of digging into the data, finding out some patterns, in fact, I would say it's a real uncovered general area of IT service management. It's not only about deducting problems from incidents, finding out some root causes, but it can be much more like that. For instance, it can be what can be the level of details you need. I give you an example. We had a customer, and the customer pushes us to be very transparent in the invoices because it was an internal customer, and he wanted to know, for what we invoiced on a monthly basis for IT services. So we developed a very, very, sophisticated model based on asset management in order to convince that, we are very transparent. So we define, all the rules in order, to allocate the cost, the indirect cost, and all these things. And this, can really be also, it's a discovery, discover the cost, allocate that properly to be sure that your customer will be happy with the result at the end of the invoice, at the bottom line. It's another, we don't really think about that. We say, yes, incident, problem. It's a use case, it's a common one, but you have many others,
Absolutely.
So what I think about your tool is that it really has a potential. I like the idea of this, Ishikawa diagram to show the relationship, because it's a very good visual tool. And I look forward to discussing more with you, with your team, about what can be, other use cases we can use in respect with the value streams, because I'm persuaded that your tool has a potential to be one of the tools that can, that's a new generation of tool, by the way. It's not just about talking of AI or machine learning or what you said before. It's also about the new field of, we have to transform the tools from process-based to value stream-based, and it's a completely different story. So, and I think that your tool can help organizations to identify where to focus their energy in the creation of value streams.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like that answer. It's focus, like you said. That's we use that word a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Thank you so much, David and Terry. So that kind of brings me towards the end of this. So thank you so much, David, for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, today we had the honor of hosting David Billouz, ITIL Master. We learned from his experiences and insights into the evolving landscape of ITIL, especially how we have moved now to a conceptual level where we are talking about value streams rather than just business processes and IT processes in isolation. Thank you so much for your time, David. Thank you so much for your time, Terry, as well. With that, I will bring this session to a wrap. Thank you.